Wuthering Waves has hit the global servers for about a week now, and you might still be thinking about trying it out. If you're coming into this video looking for reasons to actually try out the game, then you've come to the right one. If you're looking for reasons to not play the game instead, then I suggest you check out this other video that I'll link on the top right. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. Oh, and just for note, I will be drawing a lot of comparison to Genshin and Tower of Fantasy because, well, I've had decent experience with those games and they are actually the closest thing we have as a benchmark for this specific kind of game. So, sorry in advance if the comparisons ended up bugging you. Right then, let's get into the good and the great of the game. Starting with the most obvious standout feature of the game, which is its combat system. For those of you who had wished that Genshin's combat was more dynamic in character movement, or wish that Souls-like games like Dark Souls, Elden Ring had faster combat motions, then Wuthering Waves will give you just that and so much more. Combating includes dodge mechanics that were actually made to not only avoid damage, but to also contribute to your overall offensive arsenal. A counterattack slash parry mechanic that enables aggressive defending, and a slew of character switching offensive mechanics that plays into those dodging and counterattacking aspects. Their fundamental combat mechanics are just second to none in the world of actual 3D combat in the Gacha world, which was a title that I would have previously given to Tower of Fantasy, but even that had been wildly eclipsed by what we got from Wuthering Waves. Oh, and you can also use the in-game creatures that you can catch and use them like Pokemon and battle along you as well. Each character also has some sort of a combo system that you can learn and practice in order to use their kit in a more effective manner. It ain't Mortal Kombat levels of combos, but it surely is far better than just mindlessly pressing mouse 1, E, and R and your occasional right clicks to dodge. It also makes the playstyles of each character become much more clearer and straightforward, due to the fact that a lot of the combos are tailored to be played within regards to their kit's specialty. No other gacha will come close to how great their combat system is, at least not in the near future. Not to mention, the enemies are the right kind of challenging and they have the right amount of difficulty that makes it so that you actually have a chance to utilize all those mechanics I just mentioned, whilst also making sure that you're not overwhelmed with the flurry of attacks they tend to bombard you with. The way you shift between each offensive and defensive mechanics are very well done, and for the most part, they flow very naturally between one another, making the feel of the overall combat experience a much more fluid and satisfying experience. The animations and visuals for each particular skills and ultimates are also really well done. Every character, regardless of their rarity, has their very own ultimate, or in this game's case, resonance liberation animations. Of course, the 5 stars are much grander to a degree, but it's certainly such a big step from their competitors, who either only has them on their 5 stars or only procs them when they are within certain circumstances. An even cooler aspect in my opinion is that some characters like GN even have different ultimate animations depending on the circumstances which you activated them in, which really adds to the variety of actions that the characters do. I haven't seen or noticed anyone else who has this sort of variety in the game, but I'm sure that they will maintain this feature for characters that are coming in the future. Just for note, I don't look at leaks, so I'm just gonna see them when they're out. Suffice to say, if you're a combat meathead who wants to do nothing but kill stuff and hone your battle mechanics, I guarantee you that this game won't ever disappoint you in that department. It's already so good at release, I'm sure that it'll just keep improving into the future. Speaking of animation, their cutscenes are also very well made and animated, and they never shy away from implementing shorter cutscenes the way games like Star Rail does, instead of overly relying on default in-game animations to form the cutscenes instead. The composition and direction of any animated scenes are very tidily done, and all the models work elegantly and flawlessly with all the storylines that have been done so far. And the visual effects themselves, ooh, they are almost second to none with what we've seen from the entirety of the gacha industry. And one of the things that I absolutely adore from these cutscenes is the fact that it actually shows us how powerful our characters can be. My biggest glut with Genshin is always the fact that the cutscenes always feel lackluster when it comes to showcasing the certain character's actual powers, because their description is always like, oh, they can do this, they can do that, they're extremely powerful and stuff like that. But I've never really seen it and felt it through the cutscenes, especially when it comes to characters that aren't supreme beings, such as Diluc. He once went ahead against 3 Harbingers at the same time and survived, but we don't really see the extent of that power through his cutscenes. Or like Kaching, whose swordsmanship is known to even flatten rocks. Again, we don't see it through the cutscenes. And I love it that in Wuthering Waves, we actually see like Jian, ourself, and all these other characters display their powers. Yang Gang was able to hold up against that many Tacet Discords, so did Jianxin, and so many other characters were able to show their prowess through these cutscenes, and it actually feels powerful instead of it just looking cool. And it's also good to see that it's not all about action with these animations. Character expressions and body movement are also very well animated. Our rover has so many more expressions than you normally would see from other characters. Although you'll still see that typical anime game over-expressiveness from the NPC and default animation movements. But at this point, I think most of you JRPG players just roll with it, right?
Even if you still cringe internally whenever you see it.
Anyway, these little animation tidbits can also be found within our character menus and idols. The cool part being that the characters have their own intro animation whenever you selected them, and they also do more than just stand there whenever you idle on their respective tabs, making it look like they are much more alive in these screens. For you Genshin players out there, most of you would probably feel right at home with the way they arrange the UI to manage your character properties, and managing between your weapons, talents, or forte as they call it in this game, artifacts aka echoes, and constellations aka resonance chain should just be muscle memory at this point. Even if you aren't familiar with these features, they are very straightforward to navigate through, and the tutorial does a nice enough job to explain all the elements without trouble. Moving on, another one of the game's standout aspects is their world exploration. Specifically, the ways in which you go about and traverse through the terrain of the world. Characters can pretty much run up any sort of walls given the correct stamina usage, and they can also use Genshin's Sumeru Spider-Man method to quickly move around different elevations of the landscape or the city that you're in, should it be available. Gliding is just about as smooth as you would expect from any gliding mechanism from an open world game. A bit more like Zelda than Genshin or Tower of Fantasy though, and the amount of various open world interactions that you can do to solve puzzles and specific story domain levels, and also to open up different ways for you to explore certain sections of the map, is on the plentiful side. And you'd be honestly surprised at the amount of mechanics that they were able to input into the game when it comes to that department. Oh, and did I mention that running doesn't cost stamina when you're not in battle? Genshin might want to give that feature a thought. A giant launch map to boot as well. Even more pluses for the exploration gang. It's also cool to see that opposing factions of enemies within the wilderness can also fight each other if they're close enough and can aggro each other. You can literally just sit back and watch them beat each other up until they're almost dead, and then you can just slip in and finish the job yourself. Free real estate. And this also happens for wild animals and Tacet Discords, which is like the Hilichurl equivalent of this game. So if you want to farm them and you see them fighting each other, just wait a bit and then kill them. Your job will be much easier. I do want to mention their story for a bit though, even though I will mostly talk about the bulk of it in the other video, which should probably clue you into what I think of it in a flash. But I do want to mention that they have a bunch of story skip options, and it is particularly available for all the world quests where the plot within them doesn't really contribute much to the overall lore of the main story. I know for a fact that a lot of you would appreciate the availability of that feature, since most of you would rather skip the NPC dialogue lines whenever you can. So I'm putting it here so that you guys know that this is actually a feature that they offer. They are even planning to make it available for all types of stories, although I personally wouldn't recommend skipping anything connected to the main storyline, but each to their own, I guess. Oh, and a bit of spoiler warning for Jian's story quest for this next bit, so skip ahead here if you want to. But they make a point to give our two rovers a bit of a different picture in the last cutscene. It's a small thing, but it really goes to clue in the fact that the male and female rover have subtle differences both in their own personalities and their relations with other characters. A neat little thing if you ask me, and I hope they keep it going to the future. And the last thing I should talk about, but most definitely not the least considering its importance in the game, is the gacha system. I think a lot of people will be able to tolerate the gacha aspect of this game much better than its competitors. Not only do they have a lower pity count than Genshin, it is also considerably better rates-wise. On paper, at least. Your mileage, or luck in this case, just like in every other gacha games you play, will most considerably vary between one another. Because so far, I can say for certain that my luck here is just as donkey as it is in all my other gachas. You guys might have better luck than I do. And if that's the case, then you can go Moving on. Limited characters have a guaranteed pity at 80 pulls with your usual good old 50-50 to fight against, which is nothing new there. But the big dick difference that they have is the fact that the limited weapon banners are guaranteed to give you set limited weapon. So no losing 50-50s or 75-25s or getting the weapons that you don't need depending on which of them you've been losing. People who are starting out will also have a one-time banner thing that comes up after you finish the initial novice banner that gives you an option to select a standard banner character that you want to pull for from the standard banner pool. Therefore, you can pretty much start off the early game with characters that you actually wanted to have. The launch bonuses and other special events that the game is currently running will help you get through the majority of the pulls that you need to get to that selector 5-star. So, overall, a pretty good starting experience pull-wise. One last cool thing about the gacha system is that once you've accumulated enough of the premium pull currencies, you can actually purchase your character's resonance chain through the gacha store, with the only caveats being that you need to first acquire that character through the banner itself, and you can only get a maximum of 2 of those resonance chains through this method, which is still very neat nonetheless. Who knows, maybe you were 2 away from completing a full character R6, then you'd know exactly where to get the last 2 of those resonance chains from. Oh, and as I was writing this script, they announced that hotfix compensation, which gives us a free 5-star standard banner character selector, which is even more wins for everyone who is playing. And for those of you wondering if you can still get that free 5-star selector if you start now, the selector rewards will be given to anyone who reached Union Level 2, which literally just takes you starting the game to get to, by the 3rd of July, 4 AM UTC plus 8 time. So if you don't want to miss out on it, then get a move on and start an account before it goes away. Whether you continue playing or not, you can decide on it later on. At the very least, you know that you'll have a free 5-star the moment you choose to play the game later on. And that's about all that I can say for those who are looking for reasons to play this game. All in all, I think this is a game that you should at least give it a try instead of outright skipping it. Obviously, I won't be able to guarantee if you would want to stay or if the game would at least develop the way we've seen it so far, but at the very least, you'd be able to get a taste of how the game truly feels like and can make a decision to leave or to stay based on your own experience instead of what other people say in these sorts of videos. Ironically, if you feel as if I didn't cover enough of a particular topic in this video, then you might want to check out the other video discussing the cons of this game instead. Maybe I talked about said topic much more extensively in it, but if you still haven't found it there, then maybe consider leaving that thought in the comment section down below. Thank you for making it this far and giving the video a watch. Hopefully it helped you decide on whether or not you'd give this game a try. A like would be appreciated and good luck with your gacha endeavors regardless of which of them you play. Until the next video, my name's Leafy, and I'll see you folks next time. Sayonara.